Hi, everybody. My name is Caroline Baldassare. I'm a third-year commerce student here at Queen's. I grew up in Toronto, but I wouldn't say I've had the average Toronto life. I went to a small French international school with about 20 students in my grade. It was in the Little Jamaica of Toronto, and if you're from Toronto, do we have any Torontonians here? Oh, there you go. You probably still don't know where the Little Jamaica of Toronto is. So next slide. I'm going to ask for a volunteer from the audience to try and read what is written behind me. All right, you.
Lycée Francus de Toronto.
There we go. Okay, so that kind of proves my point. At every sports tournament, we were referred to as Lycée Francis de Toronto, which is a really cute name, but the actual name is Lycée Français de Toronto. So that was always fun. Because my school was so small, I definitely had some really interesting experiences. With so few students over the span of 8 years, you got to know one another really, really well. Even the teachers were involved in the class gossip. They knew who was dating who, when the parties were. When it came to our prom, we all tried to get people from outside of our school to come. And even then, we only had 30 people. So you can imagine how big my prom was. Just 2 tables of 30 students, not really doing much, but you know, what can you do? The after prom is where it got really interesting though. One of my teachers, so as I mentioned, we did have a really strong bond with the teachers as well. And one showed up to our after prom, but not to chaperone, but to actually party with us. And so I remember looking down and seeing him on the floor playing that bottle cap game with another student. So I witnessed my teacher play a drinking game with one of my friends. That was the level of comfort that we had achieved there. The point I'm trying to make with these stories is that I was surrounded by people who knew me so, so well over the span of 8 years. Fast forward to move-in day here on campus at Queen's. This would be my first major adjustment, making all new friends. So back to move-in day. My dad is carrying a mini fridge up 3 flights of stairs, as fathers do. My mom is helping me organize my room, and I'm coming to the realization that I'm going to be living in a closet-sized room for the next year with absolutely no one that I know. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this, whether it be from moving, changing schools, or even changing jobs, that feeling of not knowing anybody. This would be the first time I had to actively make friends. And that makes me sound really socially awkward, and I promise I know how to interact with people. But I had been with the same people for so long, and suddenly they weren't there anymore. Sorry, guys. So luckily, I met some awesome people, made some great friends, and met my amazing boyfriend. And through these relationships, I've changed. My friends motivate me to be better. My professors inspire me to try new things, and because of this, I've grown. I recently started my own company where I sell hand-embroidered sweaters that I sew myself. So it's called So Cute. You guys get it? It's like, so. So far what I've had to do is contact a manufacturer to get the actual sweaters. Then I hand embroider the designs myself in my room. Then I package them and ship them off. So what I want you to get from this is that you should accept change. You shouldn't fear it. If I had let the fear of change get a hold of me, I would have never made all these great relationships, and I would have never tried starting my own company. Accept change and don't fear it. A little bit more about me is that I've always been very into sports, and I love getting involved in my school sports. However, at my tiny little French school in Toronto, organized sports didn't work the way you might think they would. We didn't have set teams, we didn't have practices, and we didn't have tryouts. We would just simply have 2 gym teachers who would choose the most athletic kids and send them off to every single tournament. Whether or not you knew how to play the sport, it didn't matter at all. I remember being taught how to do the high jump for the very first time, literally as my competition was lining up for the main event. I want to show you guys a picture of our track team. So there we all are. You can notice I have a black eye. It's unrelated, but You can also notice the gentleman with the sweatshirt on his head. And now I want to show you my badminton team. So again, very professional looking, with some very interesting makeup choices for the day, and more or less the same people. Then I came to Queens, and that didn't happen here. You had to actually try out for the teams, and more importantly, you had to know how to play the sport, which was kind of crazy to me, but as silly as that sounds, it was unfamiliar. It was tough because I didn't quite know how to get involved. For anyone that's been to Queens or has lived in residence, then you've had a Don. And for those of you who don't know what a Don is, it's an upper year student who lives with you in residence and is there for any questions that you might have. They'll know the answers, and if they don't, they know who will. My Don helped me out a lot. He told me how to get involved in sports, got my floor involved in some intramurals, and then I later joined the fencing team and the gymnastics team. So that was my second major adjustment, and all it took was asking for help. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about is my third major adjustment, and it involved academics. Now, the one thing I did not have to adjust to was receiving a bad grade here and there. My school loved to give really poor grades. In Spanish, for example, we would receive negative points on conjugation tests for certain mistakes, which meant on questions that you got right, you would lose points off of other mistakes. Have any of you ever received a negative 14 on an exam? I don't mean like a 0, I mean negative 14, because I have. But now I know how to conjugate in Spanish, so yay. Many of my peers did have to adjust to receiving bad grades, though, every now and again. It's shocking to receive your first bad grade in university. But what you do have to know is that it's normal, it's going to happen, and you can't let it break you down. Now, as for the adjustment I did have to make. So as I mentioned, I went to a French school, and everything was taught to me in French. On top of that, the way things were taught was very different from high school to university. The methods that were being used, the way problems were solved, even the terminology for some of my courses changed quite drastically from French to English. I also mentioned that we had really small class sizes. So if you were falling behind, then there was no problem to receive help. Okay. So if you needed help, the teachers could help you on a one-to-one basis, and if you were falling behind, the teachers would come to you and actually offer you help. When I came to Queens and now had classes with 70 other people and occasionally hundreds, it was a bit overwhelming. I also had more work and more studying than I was previously used to. I was learning everything in a different language than I was used to. It was hard and it was stressful, for sure, and academics took over my life for a little bit. But what you have to remember is that there are always resources. I had access to tutors, learning sessions, academic advisors, all of which I used. But what I also want you to remember is that it's important to take time off for yourself. It's important to make sure that you're okay and that your own quality personal time is taken. So what I really want you guys to all go home with today is that all you have to do sometimes is ask questions. You're not always expected to know the answers. That your personal time is just as important as your work time and study time. It's important to make sure that you're okay. And finally, that change should be welcomed. You shouldn't fear it, and positive change will always come if you surround yourself with people who make you better. Thank you all.